All right, guys, welcome back to Carter Engineering and Fabrication. This is week 10. I'm Chad. If you're new, thanks for joining. Today we've got some stuff to go over, some fun things. Thankfully, everybody's healthy, so a lot more progress was made this week. We'll go over some of it. I took notes to try and keep my brain organized a little bit, so I got a couple 3D prints to share. We're going to go over some stuff with Bill's Jeep, kind of a quick status update on that, and then lots of progress on the Buick. Holding my fingers like you care if I'm counting, but some stuff on the Buick. It's a 1970 Buick Skylark. I'll do just a real quick intro, share some of the CAD work, the preliminary stuff on the frame, and then go into the frame modifications that got started. So with that, let's get into it. All right, so to kind of kick this off, I thought I'd show a couple pictures of the Buick when I picked it up. I found it on Marketplace. The guy was offering it for parts, but I messaged him. I'm like, hey, how much for the whole car? And he threw out a pretty reasonable price, and I thought, why not? This could be fun. I fell in love with a separate Buick. I think I mentioned this once before, but there was another Buick that fell through, and I started looking specifically for those as opposed to just any project. And I found this one, and it's crusty, but I figure I saved it from the crusher. I can do what I want with it, and I feel zero guilt. So got it home, started the disassembly process, and there's not a lot there. So the interior had house carpet in it. Somebody's pride and joy. It's been painted at least once. It was originally like that muted mustard color, and then they sprayed it gold. The original drivetrain, the 14's on terrible lug nuts. Anyway, I'll make the gallery available if you guys are curious, but this is what it looked like at the guy's wrecking yard. This was in his private stash. He had some pretty cool A-bodies, G-bodies, a couple old Trans Ams. You can kind of see one poking out back there in the back corner. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. I have an infinite whiteboard, Miro.com if you're curious. It's a pretty neat tool to use where you can capture links, flowcharts, pictures, inspirational type stuff. So here's the car unloaded at home, sitting on 305 30 19s in the rear and 255 35 19 in the front, I think. I bought a couple really cheap used tires off eBay just to do a quick mock-up and kind of set the vision in process. Captured some cars that just trying to see what kind of wheels I want to do and what kind of look I want to go for, and I keep gravitating towards this street brawler poverty cap look, but I really like this GS has body colored bumpers, which I'll probably end up doing because my bumpers are in rough shape and I am not putting the money into them to have them chromed. So kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but the preface for this is important to understand what I'm doing on the frame that I have. So I started thinking what would be a good way to update the drivetrain. I sold the complete takeout of the car, the 352 barrel turbo 350, the frame, that whole rolling chassis is gone. And I started looking around, and they made a full framed Crown Victoria chassis up until 2010, and they made a bajillion of these cars. The latest iteration in 2003 to 2010 has the updated rear suspension and front suspension. They went from a canted 4-link to a parallel 4-link with the Watts link. And the more I looked at it, I was able to find a frame drawing for the 68 to 72 A-body, and then the same thing for the 2003 to current Crown Vic, and a lot of similarities lined up, and you get a lot of benefits with this. You get better steering geometry, rack and pinion steering, more caster angle. Rear axle geometry is better. The 8.8 is a lot cheaper to build than the rare 10 bolt or the very expensive 12 bolts. The list goes on, and I thought, I started pricing it out, and it doesn't make sense for for a lot of people, but this was kind of a way to fabricate something a little bit unique. And here, I'll jump into SolidWorks real quick just to show. Come on, buddy. I overlaid the frame drawings. I just quickly roughed these in based on the PDFs I found online. So here we're looking at a top-down view with the Crown Vic shortened in length and narrowed, and then the Chevelle as is. So looking at it from a side view, you can see that the Crown Vic is longer in both the rear and the front, and also the axle location doesn't visually look right. So I'm just taking this as a starting point. And same thing when I look at the top down, the body location holes obviously don't line up, but the most important thing was getting the width down. So checking the outside width, and I have a reasonable amount of confidence that the body's going to sit down on this. So that's really the starting point. And then I started capturing some other little things like emblems and gauges, trying to rough out what I want. I'd like to do 3-point seat belts in the front, so I've been looking a lot at two-door convertible cars from the early to mid 2000s. A lot of them had integrated seat belts into the seat, and if I'm redoing the floor structure, this gets you a seat that has the shoulder harness and also flips forward to allow people to access the back seat. So like this case is a 2000 Sebring. There's a few other ones. There's a few Saabs that are like that. Chrysler 200 convertibles. So finding seats that fit those criteria should be pretty doable. I think I already mentioned like the dog dish, the poverty cap, steel wheel look, and I actually bought a set of 19 by 7.5 wheels that are steel wheels for a winter for I think a Honda. I actually don't remember offhand. There we go. So I'm planning, I saw a guy did a smooth set of Crown Vic wheels and then mounted center caps, and I thought it looked really cool. So I actually plan to do exactly that, fill all the holes in, metal finish the wheels, and I'm gonna widen the rear. So I started doing just some quick math on Chevelle rear end to Explorer rear end. The Crown Vic rear end is extremely wide, but if I narrow it to Explorer width, I can use the Explorer center section 30 spline axles, Explorer axles, and Explorer center section with the better gearing. And rough math says if I widen the rear wheels to the outside, the offsets will work, the fronts can be used as is. So I'm going to get back to this is pretty much my desired ride height in the rear and the front. Maybe a touch lower. I am tentatively planning to put this thing on air, but I think that's enough of me rambling about the why. I didn't save very many videos, but here's the 2006 Lincoln Town Car. It was prepped for a derby car. I got it cheap off Marketplace. Ended up just stripping the body. It had more surface rust on it than I cared for. So flipped it over with a skid steer, zipped all the bolts out, and here's the rolling chassis. Alright, so my camera battery died unknowingly on me, or actually it had a poorly formatted disc. Anyway, I lost some of the shenanigans of me getting this rolling frame up on the table. It took several jacks, skates, and ended up using the cherry picker with the door open. It was a bit of a mess, but it's on the table now. This is late one evening last week. So here I am just getting it roughed out on the table. I wanted to take a quick measurement to verify the wheelbase. This is the longer town car chassis, and just a sanity check to make sure my numbers are good. And then here we are, I think the next day, so everything's had a chance to dry out in the shop a little bit, getting the rear axle out of the way so I can get the frame all the way down on the table. Yeah, this was not smart on my part. Alright, moving on. it didn't hurt anything, and honestly, I'm not going to be using much of this axle, mostly just the part of the housing, so no big deal. Moving on to the front, getting the front suspension zipped off. This came apart reasonably well. I fought with the passenger side, learning just the order of how to get things out. The captured bolts that hold the upper control arms can't come out till the springs and the strut assembly's out. All in all, not terrible. We got this sped up 25 times, so we're watching me blow through it. This took a while, but every bolt came out, and it could have been a lot worse. I actually didn't realize until getting to this point that those bolts went all the way up through the top. So the overall assembly makes a little more sense now that I've been through it. And people do, I think RideTech makes bolt-in airbag coilovers for the front. That's my current plan, is to use those and then retain the airbags. You see them on the table. Retain the airbags, the factory air suspension in the rear. Just the bags though, I'd be using a standalone controller, an AccuAir or something similar. So this is a good step where we're finally down on the fixture table. Could start pulling some measurements, getting the 8.8 rear axle up into the my quote-unquote axle stand. So that's enough for that day. I think that was Friday. It was Friday evening. Yeah, looking pretty good. I went over it a little bit with a needle scaler, and it's got some crusty places in it, but honestly, by the time I get done, there won't be much Crown Vic frame left, so I'm not super concerned about that. And then just looking over the axle assembly. Same answer there. Mostly I'm going to save the backing plates and part of the housing. I'll likely cut the tubes off because I'm going to be narrowing it, like I mentioned, to Explorer width. So once you get the front crossmember out, the aluminum crossmember out, there's not much holding this frame together at this. So starting on the aluminum crossmember, off camera I ran it through the parts washer, trying to get all of the buildup. It had a leaking power steering rack at one point, so getting all of the dirt and grease buildup, oil buildup off of it, just to have something reasonable to start with in terms of cleanliness. Here I am going over the corroded areas with a needle scaler. I really like a needle scaler. I never appreciated how useful they are. Knocking down the center with the DA and just trying to get it pretty clean to start with. Here I am trying to figure out where the flat spots are to fixture it, take some measurements, get it clamped down, and lay out the two cuts to narrow it, the 4 and 11/16 inch to match the Lincoln. And quick note here, that's a pretty big blemish in the aluminum, so I'm trying to offset the cut a little bit too, so I don't have to fill that. So broke out the portaband, just tracing my way around, used a square on the table, and that little flash on the screen was Tom Lipton's Ox Tools latest video. He mentioned using an applicator, a needle for anchor lube, and I'd done that and I actually really like using that. So I'm having a hard time talking fast enough to keep up with 25X, but we're gonna get through it. I've got it clamped back down, straightened, beveled, cleaned, and it's ready to TIG weld. So quick preheat and suited up. Yeah, preheat helped quite a bit, and got everything fixtured up, all the measurements lined up correctly afterwards. And so here I am showing some of the arc shots. I didn't want to go back and touch up those craters. I'm not happy with how that turned out, but they welded up nice. I had cleaned them inside and out, and here I am with the Prime Weld 200. Very happy with how that came out, and it's on the little baby fixture table. It worked well. So we're getting the frame set up now. I've got the laser set. You can see the green line on the middle of the table. So I'm projecting front to back, the center. Going to cut the rear frame rails off just to make it a little easier to work on, and they don't fit the Chevelle floor pan. So just make myself a little more working room, and also have a nice square, mating surface to start with when I start laying out the new frame rails. So they're cut to the same length. They're cut vertically. And then here I am laying out the centerline cuts, and trying to pick a spot in the rear that matches up so it came out decent in terms of like existing holes in the top of the stamping. So the rear I cut partially through, and then right here I'm going back and cleaning up all of the edges, just kind of weld prep before I cut that whole piece loose, and then go back and finish the cuts to drop that piece out. So now it's ready to, again, I got the little 1/2x18 mini belt sander, dressing the edges up. The rear is going to be a finished weld. The front is eventually going to get cut off, so I'm not taking a lot of time to prep that. Just line it up, clamp it, square everything on the table. I did measure like front to back, so make sure the whole thing's not racked like a parallelogram. There's quite a bit of time in making sure that it's, you know, even though it's still pretty flexible, making sure that it's in the right spot and laid out correctly. So this will be the first step of 2 steps, right? So I'm narrowing it width-wise, and then I'm gonna have to come back and figure out where I wanna make my cuts and narrow it approximately 5 inches lengthwise. But this is as far as I got this, you know, work session, tacking the rear end, checking all the measurements, and then in just a minute I'll break out the torches to massage an area where it didn't line up right just because the cut lines were different. I'm kicking myself a little bit. I should have just got the torch out when I had the aluminum crossmember ready for welding. It's on a 100-foot hose reel, and there's no reason I should have done that, just to do a better job preheating. But all in all, everything came out pretty decent. Here I am blending in a little spot, added a filler piece. I should add a zoomed in view of that, but the frame's looking quite nice, and so far I think this was an okay decision. So you can put a Crown Vic chassis under your Chevelle, or, you know, any A body if you want to. Just spend all the money on tools instead of just buying a roadster shop chassis. So, you know, be smarter than me. Just buy the roadster shop chassis. This is me, 50 times speed, just fun cleanup. It's always satisfying to watch the shop go back to a clean state, and I've been trying to be very diligent about putting stuff away. There's me, a little dirty. So this is Bill's Jeep. It's a new project that's going to come after Julie's Bonneville. I gotta get some good work done on her project. But if you listen really closely, if you really strain your ears, you can almost hear that it has a slight engine noise. It's very faint, so I don't know if you'll pick up on it or not. But it's going to need some work. This thing's lived a life, and I'm sure it's got some stories to tell. But I did a Jeep thing. I took the door off. I went off-roading. Still don't understand it, but that's okay. And the last thing for this week, this was a quick little model I found online of a parametric box. So I printed a key box. It was a nice little addition just to keep things a little better organized. All right, so that was quite a lot. Kind of a longer video, so just a couple thank yous to go over. Firstly, my friend Ryan has been super supportive. He has a pretty awesome YouTube channel where he's, you know, currently working on a 47 Power Wagon, but he gets into a lot of good projects. We've been friends for a really long time, and as soon as he found out I had a channel, he reached out with some words of motivation, so I appreciate that. A shout out on his channel just a few days ago. So I got a link in the description for his page. He's a very talented welder, machinist, fabricator, and an incredible musician. So if you're interested, please go check him out. He's 497 subscribers, I just checked, so he's 3 away from that magic 500 number. So yeah, give his page a look. I'd appreciate it. I'm sure he'd appreciate it too. Second thank you for the day is to my customer, Julie and Bill. Customers, Julie and Bill. Thank you for your patience. I'm a little scatterbrained, but I will be making progress on the Bonneville, and I will be sharing it here so you guys can follow along as well. And lastly, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. I'm finding myself really encouraged. My last video had the most views, so I'm seeing an increase in people that are watching what I'm doing. That's really satisfying. So I appreciate that. Drop a comment, let me know a question you have or something you want to see. Yeah. This is great, and I'm really having fun with it. So keep pushing my skill set, trying to make the editing a little better and make it flow. I try to make it to where it's something that I would enjoy watching. So again, thank you. I'm appreciative. See you guys next week.